we are in a particular time when before you came here early at the top of the show, we were talking about a series of horrific things that are happening. We're at day 13 in this Derek Chauvin trial. During the trial, they killed a young man, Daunte Wright, who's George Floyd's girlfriend actually taught in high school. The parallels are weird. The police officer who mistook her gun for a taser, got to resign. She's just been charged today with second-degree manslaughter. Don was saying she didn't make a mistake. He said the nature of racism, there's no mistake, even if it's subconscious. You don't mistake a taser and a gun. You just don't. 26 years on the force. That's not a mistake you make.
And former
what are
head
your thoughts? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Don.
Former head of the FOP. I want to clarify. I'm not saying she didn't make a mistake. I'm saying we need to stop operating from the presumption that intentionality is impossible here.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, because what we know is that bias, both conscious and unconscious, plays a part in all of these incidents. And what I puzzle about is, it seems to me that the reason and rationale that these officers involved in these incidents tend to use is that they were fearful of their lives. So they're in an admitted state of fear and anxiety. Well, guess what? So is the Black person or the person of color or the marginalized person that you are in the moment jamming up with all of that energy of fear, right? So as de-escalation is impossible under those circumstances. I watched the video of the brother who was being pepper sprayed the other day, and that officer was jacked. He was jacked, and it was his loss of his rational mind that caused him to engage in the very aggressive behavior that he was. And let's face it, at this point in policing, it seems to me that the intention in these stops where they involve people of color is to dominate the moment, to get and secure submission from the suspect. And I'm resistant to submitting simply because you tell me that I have to. If you can't control yourself and engage in a dialogue with me about why you are stopping me, then it's only going to lead to a bad outcome for everybody. And so I think that the conversation is heading in the right direction. How do we take these responsibilities, traffic stops, domestic violence disputes? How do we take these out of the hands of a force nationwide that whenever they encounter people of color, they're on edge out of fear? They have conditioned themselves to look at Black people as the other, and so their immediate response, physiological response, is fight or flight in all of these encounters. And it just leads to bad outcomes.
We never see the flight, though. We never see the flight. It's always fight.
We always
fight.
Yeah.
You know, as a celebrity, hold on. As a celebrity, you know, I often wonder, because Cher said if I were there, maybe George Floyd wouldn't have died. And I was like, she's probably right. If Cher showed up with her ass cheeks out, with her hair, you know, looking like Cher, perhaps the people would say, hey, that's Cher. Let's stop doing what we're doing. You're a celebrity. But I find, you know, Ving Rhames on these airwaves on the Clay Kane show said the cops came to his house with guns drawn because a neighbor said, you know, some Black man is in the house that he owns. Have you had any situations? Because I know very few Black men. My father used to wear a suit and tie, even to cookouts in the summertime. And he said, this is my bulletproof vest. So when they pull me over, they'll see a man. They'll see a person of substance. And I was like, that suit ain't gonna protect you. It ain't bulletproof. It's not really bulletproof, but you know. And when we would drive down south, it was always this.
I understand Pop's logic and reasoning. And my favorite T-shirt these days is "Dear Police, I am a white woman."
White woman. I'm a white woman.
And you're right. Cher may have been able to have intervened, and Cher is a white woman. I would not have been met with the same sort of, success as Cher might have been.
And
Have
we
you had any
constantly-
encounters?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, of course. I have a small series on YouTube called This Is My Story, where I recount the stories of people of color who have had run-ins with the police that have been significant in their lives. And the first story I tell in the series is one of my own. And I share that back when I was in college at USC, my sophomore year, I lived on Fraternity Row. I was the first Black person to live on 28th Street here in Los Angeles, which is Fraternity Row at the University of Southern California. And Fraternity Row, I mean, some of the sons and daughters of some of the most influential and wealthy people in the country live on that street. They pledge these sororities and fraternities. I was a boarder in the Jewish fraternity house, in the Sami house, Sigma Alpha Mu. And because the house was noisy, I would do all of my studying between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. And then I would, I'd be hungry. So I would walk east on 28th Street, turn right at Figueroa and go to the Vagabond Motor Hotel and Coffee Shop, get some French fries, maybe a strawberry shake. I was 19 and I could handle that. And every night for the first 2 months, not every night, but most nights, I was stopped by law enforcement that had a very, strong presence around the row. I was stopped and asked for ID because I always answered the description of someone who was stealing car stereos in the neighborhood. And one night, I'm walking to the Vagabond, and I'm cut off by a cop car. Doors fly open, and I am staring down the barrel of a gun. And the moment that really hit home for me was realizing that I recognized the officer, not the one holding the gun. He was but the driver was the man who stopped me just 2 nights before. And I realized in that moment that they don't see me. What they see is a suspect. And I never left my house without my student ID that had my address on it, 801 West 28th Street, because I knew that was my bulletproof vest, right? And in that incident, I realized just how tenuous that proof of belonging was, because they never from jump saw me as someone who belonged there. Their assumption was that I was an interloper, I was a stranger. And in addition to that, their assumption was that I was a criminal.
See, I want to be heartwarmed by the stories of your father's suit and tie, Karen, and your student ID, Brother Burton. But what worries me is that there is no token, right, of invincibility. There is no shield, because ultimately it's this that is the offending tool here, right?
That's
And
right.
I can't get rid of that. And
That's
we
right.
see brothers in suits getting whooped. We see college students getting killed. My brother Martise at UVA 4 or 5 years ago stomped half to death by police. And what worries me so fundamentally much, not for me, but for our kids and everybody else, that if it is the idea of me, if it is the essence of me, that is what worries you, that if that's what makes me a threat, then police are an existential threat to my safety and health. And that's something you can't get away from.
No, it's not. And when people say, well, all you have to do is submit, stop resisting.
Fly, yeah.
You don't have a history of 400 years of oppression in your lived experience. You don't understand what it's like for a Black man or a person of color to be in a dynamic with law enforcement, because it's different for us than it is for those who are professing, well, all you have to do is stop resisting. They are messing with you because they can, not because you've done anything wrong.
And I'm going to ask both of you. We're here with LeVar Burton, of course, and Don Calloway, my partner in power, this Wellness Wednesday. I'm struggling because, there are people in my life who don't have melanin, who I love and care for. At the exact same time, I'm having a visceral reaction to racism that shows up usually in the bodies of people without melanin in this country. And this construct of whiteness, whether it is made up, it is not real, but it is powerful, and it is an edict under which we operate globally. It's a global space. How do we navigate our relationships? You've been married, it'll be 30 years next year.
Mm-hmm.
Has your relationship with your wife shifted and changed as our culture, when I look at the insurrection and the 4 years of Trump and the hyper way, the Dylan Roofs and the others who have, there's something going on in this country. How do you navigate your relationships when race is so much entwined with our everyday life? And maybe it's not, and maybe that's where we compartmentalize.
Well, thankfully, and purposefully, I am married to a Black woman.
Oh, okay. All right.
And she gets it.
All right.
So
that's good. But there is that question though, LeVar Burton, for people who are not, and people who are in partnerships and friendships, and even the partnerships, become more and more difficult.
I'm not gonna lie. I looked up while you were asking the question. I looked up LeVar Burton's wife. I was like, "Oh snap!" But we're good. We're good.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I have myself begun to engage in what I know are difficult conversations with my melanin challenged friends, and I'm not going to lie to you. They're difficult. They're hard conversations to have. And here's what I am reporting from the field. If it's hard for me to have these conversations with people I know and love, and I know I need to have these conversations, what that says to me is and I'm not sure if it's going to be more difficult or easier to have these conversations with strangers. What I do know is that these are conversations that must be had. And I think first it has to happen with those in your circle, right? Who lack the melanin, which means that they have a shared lived experience and that they're coming from that understanding. I believe in allyship deeply and respect those allies who really do show up with good and correct intentions. We are all going to need to stretch ourselves here going forward. We are all going to need to stretch ourselves if our intention is to heal this society, because, and as we all know, or as most of us know, I will say that this system is one that was designed to be pejoratively negative to Black bodies. And that's what we are combating. Centuries of ingrained behavior and thought patterns that are dangerous to people who look like us.
Oof, LeVar Burton, he is here, LeVar Burton, and check out his podcast where he's reading books. LeVar Burton is reading, and it's everything.